and welcome back to another episode of PK's War Room, the badly named podcast that's kind of about Warhammer but isn't. Well, it is. I say it isn't, that's not true. And today I'm joined by the Kitbash man himself, which is kind of our topic for today. Kitbash Kirioth? Your name's not even Kirion. Kitbash Kirioth. Once I turned into a brain scramble, I could not say. Hello, Kirioth. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. I'm fine. We're past the technical difficulty stage.
So many of them. And there might be more for all I know, because we're using different fucking systems and everything like that. To layer out what we're doing today, for people who don't know, this is a podcast, so there are 3 episodes prior to this. You can find a podcast playlist on my channel, and you can find them on Spotify, iTunes, and maybe some other places. I can't remember if I put them up other places. Today, we're going to talk generally about getting creative within the hobby, which is something you're kind of known for, right? Would you say that?
That's mostly all that I do. At this point, I think I kitbash more armies than I actually play the game.
Well, I think that is fair to say, but that's also like its own part of the hobby, right?
Yeah, definitely. And also, it's one of the whole things that makes playing the game fun for me is the fact that I get to take the silly things I've made and actually use them for something. So that's like, it's all sort of part of the same thing. Like there's the end goal of one day this army will be usable. It's just going to take so much more time to get it to that stage because I've opted to do something silly on every single model. So it's like, I'm starting a new project and in 2 years you might be able to play against it.
So is a use for it important for you? Did you only kitbash if you've got a use for it at the end of it?
That used to be the case. Not so much anymore. I've started to just make stuff for the fun of it. There's a lot of I guess like therapeutic stuff going on with kitbashing. With that side of the hobby in general. Like building models and painting is like, it's the ultimate little zen space, isn't it? Where you can just go, here's my tiny man. Then nothing exists outside of the tiny man. Only the tiny man and the little tools I'm using on him. That's it. There is nothing beyond this. That the world is tiny man whilst I'm painting this face.
You say tiny man, but some of your men are quite big. Some of them are shadow blade sized or gargan sized. Shoulder.
Yeah, I mean bigger than Mega Gargants. All my Mega Gargants are bigger than the actual Mega Gargant kit that Games Workshop sells, which wasn't intentional, but I'm not complaining.
I mean, you're essentially modelling for disadvantage when it comes to Age of Sigmar with larger models, right?
Oh, 100%. It's a good job line of sight isn't really a thing, because I'd be in real trouble. There's some stuff, like, there's a big angel thing over there. It's I think, about a third taller than the actual Mega Gargant model. So it's like comedically big. You put it down on the table next to an actual one, and it's like, why did you do this? Why is it that big?
Is it the correct base size?
Yeah, it's the correct base size.
Okay, so that's the only bit that really matters for Age of Sigmar. So let's clarify some terms before we get too into the weeds of this, because I've got a lot of questions about this sort of stuff, and I think it's an interesting topic. But for people who are listening at home, because this podcast is aimed at the widest possible net possible, because that's how I want to, I guess, grow this as a thing. So when we say kit bashes, do you want to explain what a kit bash is to people who are like, what the fuck is a kit bash?
That's fair. I mean, I actually think it's kind of both an intuitive term and not an intuitive term at the same time. If you're into the hobby, you know the different boxes that are being sold as kits. So if you buy the Terminator Lord for the Chaos Space Marines, you know that kit has got options for like lightning claws and Kami Bolt and all the different weapons, but you can also build it as a sorcerer as well. So you know that's a kit with multiple options. Kit bashing is just taking 2 or more, usually more. I mean, in my case, I don't want to think about it sometimes. Just any number of kits and mushing them together until you get something that you want out of it.
We're going to come to that a bit later, by the way, is how... Because I also love a good kit bash, and how...
Yeah.
There's an argument that's wasteful, there's an argument that's quite exuberant in some ways. We'll come to that more a little bit later. But for people who are wondering what the word kit, what this kit thing, we're going to do some proper origin here. Because, like, modelling back in the day would have been, like, just building a cottage out of, like... It was what's called scratch building now. You'd build your thing out of just stuff. And then along came kit modelling, which is your Airfix, it's your Warhammer, it's your, here's some injection moulded plastic or white lead or back in the day, or resin or whatever it is, and you cut it all up and then you put it together via the instructions, usually with a bit of modularity, a bit of changeability. Like you said, the Chaos Lord kit being able to be a Chaos Sorcerer is so unusual by today's GW standards, because most characters are like, you get a head swap on the sprue, and besides that, and maybe one weapon option. Most characters are hard locked, but that's what kits are.
Yeah.
So kit bashing, like you said, sticking them together. So that's kit bashing. Before we get really into it, so we're going to do our stupid introductory segments that I always want to do, because structure is important and familiarity is good. Children love that shit. What have you been doing recently in terms of hobbying?
Mostly, I'm mostly been preparing for two things. I'm going to be doing a battle report soon with Liam Dempsey.
Sweet.
So I'm finally finishing painting my Armoured Company, which I tried to find the first post of like when that project started, and was really upset with myself to realise that the 2-year figure I came up with like a moment ago, that's
I think you were doing those. You were doing those tanks when I first saw your stuff when I got into the hobby, which was at least 3 and a bit years ago, wasn't it?
It might be longer than that. I mean, it kind of started out as one thing and turned into another thing. But like the Armoured Company is like an actual usable army has only really been a thing for like 2 and a bit years, which it's way too long. It shouldn't take that long. That's down to, hobby butterfly issues of just going, ooh, a new shiny thing, which happens a lot. But
so when you say Armoured Company, explain that for people who haven't seen this yet. And where's best to see your kit bash? Because you do some videos on it, but like, is it on Insta and shit?
I put stuff on Twitter, I put stuff on Instagram. There's like a whole other channel that I'm building up content for, just like filming it and editing it so that there's a huge backlog before I actually set anything up for it.
Oh, that's a good channel.
Like it's just gonna be a hobby channel. Horror Show Hobbies is what I've ended up naming it, because every single thing is basically an experiment. And the kind of, I guess the conceit is, when I go into it, I don't know whether it's going to turn out really well, in which case it should be something that causes a little bit of discomfort, because that's often what I aim for with kit bashes. I like monstrous things and, unusual tanks and things with a kind of, like a much darker and, like the Armoured Company, for instance, it's like a haunted tank regiment, effectively. So there's like weird stuff going on with it. And if it doesn't go as I wanted, then it's the other type of horror show where it just goes absolutely wrong and nothing works as it should. So either way, it's going to be bad, but it'll either be intentionally bad or it'll be an actual catastrophe, and I've got to try and fix that somehow. But I'm kind of building up a bunch of stuff for that, because I've found that, weirdly, despite the channel being about like primarily 40k and, well, Games Workshop stuff as a whole, hobby videos don't actually do that well.
Yeah, it's like a different audience, I guess, or only a portion of your audience is necessarily interested.
I think that's the thing. There's always people going, oh, you should put more of your hobby on the channel, and then I do, and I'm like, I've tried this though, and you don't watch it.
Yeah,
like, there's requests for it, but then the actual like, the number of people who like take you up on the thing they asked for is always way lower than the number of people who actually asked for it to begin with.
The demand can seem higher than it is, especially when you get like 15 people on one video ask, where is X? And you put it up. Even if those 15 people watch, those 15 people are only like a small portion of like the people that actually watch the other videos. So comments can be an absolute like not a red herring as such, but they can be quite misleading in terms of like numbers and things like that. But there's also an element of like, if you want to grow in a space, because it's relevant to this podcast is on the Warhammer channel, which is my second channel, because originally I was doing Warhammer Magic on the same channel, and I believe it stilted my growth and discoverability, because YouTube cares about who clicks on a video when you first put it up. So when I put up a Warhammer video and the Magic players don't click, I put up a Magic video and the Warhammer players don't click, it just makes YouTube view the channel unfavorably. So that's why I split off to do this, and it's a smaller Pokemon channel for whenever I feel like doing a Pokemon thing, which isn't actually that often. But so splitting off makes sense, even when you think that hobbying, kit bashing, and converting should fit the general MO.
Yeah, you'd think it would overlap nicely, but it's surprising how much it doesn't, except for some reason, and I don't know why this is, videos that specifically focus on products that aren't Games Workshop stuff. So like I've worked with Archon Studio a few times, various like 3D printing Kickstarters and
Is this
stuff
3D
like
printing
that.
for Warhammer though? Is this 3D printing to make?
No, that's the thing. Like the Archon Studio stuff it's pretty much always been
That is interesting.
D&D, and in fact a lot of the other STL stuff that I've covered that have been like sponsored.
Which means there might be
videos
an
have also
untapped market or an untapped niche, shall we say? We're talking very much from content creator perspective here, kids at home.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about this, but hopefully it's at least
easy
mildly
to get into,
interesting.
isn't it?
No, absolutely, and that's part of it as well. This podcast is meant to be like chat about stuff that I enjoy, and beyond Warhammer and card games, I'm also quite into making videos on the internet. I've been doing it a while
Yeah.
now. But yeah, that's interesting. So that means there must be an untapped niche for like 3D print. Okay, let's talk about that for a second. Let's park that and talk about that because you 3D print a lot of shit for D&D, right? When you post again, check out Kirioth's Instagram. There'll be links in the show notes and shit for that because that's where you post quite a few of these images. When you post the dungeon rooms and the inns and stuff where fights are about to break out in your games, the feeling I get, and this is the feeling you probably want to capture with an audience, is I wish he was my DM. That's the feeling I get.
I mean, that's like one of the highest compliments, right? I mean,
Yeah.
to be fair, half the stuff that I like put up isn't even for like my session. So
Right.
because of working with Archon Studio so much, I've got loads of Dungeons and Lasers terrain. Admittedly, it's not just a case of they gave all of it to me. I also like have taken sponsorships with them and then spent some of that money on the Kickstarter
Because their stuff's good.
It's so good, and you can make anything out of it. And it's become, before we did like printed battle maps, so you just print a map out on A4 paper, and it would be fine. It'd be 2D, but it would be fine. And we used those for ages, and we didn't have a problem with it. It worked well. We were happy. Then I did the first video with Archon, and they sent me a big box of Dungeons and Laser stuff. I got it painted up, and then the next fight we had was in an inn. And it was a full, like, 2-floor inn that had furniture in it.
Because you dry brushed it all up as well, didn't you? It wasn't just 3D printed. That's the really, because you see a lot of 3D printed D&D stuff that's like quickly done and it's a one and done jobby, but like painting it up takes time and care and energy.
It's to do the first mix of like 3D printed props and stuff and Dungeons and Lasers plastic terrain was like a solid 3 or 4 days of just sitting there and just spraying and then spray paint it and then airbrushing and then dry brushing and then washing and then going on to the next thing and then the next thing.
Is that accessible? Okay, is that accessible to the average gamer who isn't lucky like us, who gets to spend part of their work life is sorting out sponsorships, making models, playing the games that we love? Is that an accessible thing for a normal person who they have to get home from work, deal with the kids, deal with the family, put the kids to bed, and then they've got at best an hour before they are crashing hard? Is it accessible in that regard?
I feel like it can be. It depends on how granular you want to get with it. Like all of my plastic terrain and 3D printed terrain that's painted, it's not painted down to like the finest detail. I'm not sitting there like going, I've got to make sure every like edge is perfect on this wooden floor tile. It is literally just the quickest possible method to get a good result from a few feet away.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's just impossible.
I mean, that's a skill and a talent. I say a talent. It's more of a skill because you can learn it. It's a skill that new players and new gamers and modelers have to learn. And there's good tutorials out there too. People like, I guess Midwinter Minis is a good example. I think I mentioned him in this episode because he's on the last one. He does good tutorials that teach you to do basing and terrain very quickly. Yeah. Because if you get stuck in the weeds of trying to do it like you would do a character model, you're going to drive yourself insane.
Well, that's one of the things where the last thing that Archon did is pre-painted stuff, which it still looks kind of like magic to me, but it works. So it's, they have one person just paint the entire kit and then they replicate that exact paint job onto every other kit.
Machine?
So
that does sound like magic.
They've done a little video where it sort of explains it, but it's also like, okay, but I feel like there's steps here that either you didn't explain or I don't understand, because it goes from this paint scheme that this person has painted on to then being pressed onto the kits afterwards.
Like almost like what's the like screen? Is it screen? No, it's not screen printing. What is it when you put like an image into like water or an oil or a solvent and you
hydro dipping?
Hydro dipping. Is it hydro dipped?
It's like it's on like a sort of rolly sponge thing. So it kind of goes across it.
That can't look good. That can't look good.
Honestly, it looks really good.
Can
Like,
you
they sent me
imagine
some
trying to
preview
paint
stuff
your
and-
model paint scheme onto a sponge and then applying the
thing.
sponge to the model?
I think probably what must happen is they scan the thing that's been painted, and then it's like replicated somehow through
Through
I'll have to find the
arcane
video and send it
genetic
to you.
resin
Yeah.
alchemy.
It really feels like something that shouldn't exist. But like, I've got some preview kits up there that we used literally the other day for D&D actually, and I was looking at them. I was like, this is better than I would do, because when it comes to me painting this, I've got like 2 sets of this to paint, and then there's a bunch of other sets that also need painting, and that takes time, and the easiest way is to just go super quick, dry brush it, then you're done. But if you've got one person who paints it once, and then it can just be replicated infinitely with a machine, you can have someone sit there and do a really fine job on the whole thing.
So this is all stuff that's coming to you when you buy this stuff. It comes to you. You're not getting the STLs then.
No, so the Archon stuff is plastic kits.
Because didn't Archon used to do STLs? I feel like I think I printed some STL stuff from them. Am I getting the company mixed up with someone else?
No, you might be thinking there's another company called Broken Anvil that did STLs and then moved into doing plastic kits, but they went in an interesting direction.
Maybe I'm thinking of Archvillain or someone.
There's a few companies now that are kind of shifting over to either plastic or doing like 3D printed.
Yeah,
like,
I might be getting mixed up
resin
with Archvillain, who was on their Patreon for a while because I was printing loads of their stuff. So I guess that's because going back to that point about like, can the average consumer and or player and or enthusiast and or fan or whatever term you want to use for it, can they use this stuff? Because I'm quite a big fan of 3D printing, because 3D printing it's like a hobby renaissance. Like I mentioned earlier, before kits existed, people would build cottages out of like clay and lollipop sticks, right? And then we got to like injection molding from companies, and now we're at a stage where we're moving on to you can sculpt it yourself or get someone online to sculpt it and then print that in your home. However, as someone who owns 4 3D printers myself, and they're all like out of commission and need to be fixed because they're out in the shed at the moment, like it is a hobby in itself. It's time consuming and it is annoying in some regards.
100%. It's like there's this kind of weird mix of like the allure of I can see a model, I can download it, and then in a few hours I can be painting it, and I don't have to go anywhere. And it's also so much cheaper than if I have to go out and buy a plastic kit from anyone. Like, it's not even a case of, you know, Games Workshop being expensive, which, I mean...
They fucking are. We're recording this like a day after the price increase stuff. I'm like...
Yeah.
And their example... A little tangent. Their example Warriors will be going up by 3 or 5%, an extra £1.50 or whatever. I'm like, yeah, all right, that's the Warriors. Why don't you show us how much the Knights are going up by, you bastards?
Yep, it's always the lowest cost kit, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not, oh yeah, the Land Raider, which is like a 2-decade-old kit now, is going to be another £5 or something. No, it's always the cheapest of the cheap unit that they can get away with.
It's like the guy getting out of the elevator with the llama and the milkshake, and there's like a £160 night kit or whatever. Like, what have you got there? And like £31 neck ones, and it's like, no, that's not what we're talking about, is it?
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, GW is expensive. So as an example of that, to tangent or segue and then come back to what we're talking about with 3D printing, we haven't got away from that yet. Yeah. My hobby thing at the moment is that I'm going orc fucking mad. So I've got this thing that's, you won't be able to see this if you listen on Spotify, but on YouTube, this thing's almost as big as my head. This is the arse of a stomper. So I'm building a stomper right now. This isn't even going to get played at competitive level because it's just not very good. But I really, really want to build and paint one as a hobby orc fan. But more importantly, orc mega knobs are really good right now, and they're going to get nerfed. But I'm going to build and paint 18 of them and play with 18 of them and smash them into people because they're too good. So... for people that don't know, Orc Mega Knobs come in packs of 3. I think it's £35 is like the fucking retail value for 3 of these fucking things. So I bought 10 of them. Station Forge, shout out to Station Forge again, I always mention them, because their sculpts are pretty good. They could have been sized up a little bit, because if you can see this on YouTube, they're not quite... Dropped a Mega Knob.
Don't do that.
They're not quite thick enough. But the point I'm getting at is £25 for 10 versus £35 for 3. And if my 3D printers were set up and I bought the STLs direct from Station Forge, I could have printed them for less than £25. I could have printed them for like equivalent of 6 or 7 quid. The problem is, I didn't want to clean my printers that are currently minging outside of my shed. But I also wanted these to arrive so I could build, paint, and get them all ready for... I've got a 2-day event coming up in like a week or 2. And I was really scared when ordering some of the Station Forge stuff on Etsy, because some of them are like, oh, we're printing this in like deepest, darkest Europe, and you won't see it for like 16 weeks. But luckily I found one on eBay selling it. So there's a weird thing where, like you said, I could have walked into my shed and just printed them and painted them that day. but because I'm fucking lazy, and all of the overheads of maintaining printers is a lot. Like, printing is incredible, and companies like Elegoo do great work with their tech, but my God, is the hobby still... That's not hobby. That part of the overall hobby still inaccessible in a way.
There's so much, like... That's the thing that I try and point out when people are like, oh, should I start 3D printing? It's like, okay, hang on. It's a good idea, but there's so many caveats to it. Firstly, you've seen a 3D printer and gone, I can make a bunch of miniatures at home. You can. You don't just need a 3D printer. You need a wash station. You also need a cure station. Mm-hmm. So if you're thinking, I'm going to pick up a Mars 4 for, I mean, what are they, like 120 quid or something?
Yeah, I got my Mars 2 or 3 a couple of years ago on Amazon Prime Day. I know I'm anti-Amazon too, but like, I also don't have infinite money, so when I saw it for cheap, I was like, I'm on it. It was less than 160, I think, at the time. Yeah. They might even be cheaper now. But yeah.
Yeah, like it's the printers themselves are insanely cheap for what they are. Like, it's not even that long ago that the idea of being able to do this in your house, like, it just seemed
alien. It's science fiction,
like magic. Yeah.
Asimov would be like, anything too technologically advanced looks like magic as I'm printing my resin knobs. He's like, look at those resin knobs you've produced, Vince. And I'm like, are you proud of me, sci-fi dad? But yeah, no, absolutely. But you mentioned wash stations. So when I first got my printers, I did washable resin, which I think I might move away from when I reset them up this summer, because that's the long story of this, is that I'm going to reset my printers in summer and clean them, which is going to be a fucking nightmare, because resin is toxic. I'm going to be there with gloves up to my elbows just scrubbing the fucking things.
You got to have your thingy as well, your mask.
Yeah, I do. So I'm going to come into that as well. So wash station, because I had a fucking box of water and I was scrubbing the models, and now I've got a box in my shed of just like cured resin floating in water because the box is like, I didn't choose a very good box, a fit for purpose box either, Kirioth. So I've got a box that I've got to somehow get to the dump without spilling resin water all over my car. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. So I wish I'd bought a wash station just so I could like keep it contained, clean it in a. Fuck, I wish it's like, I know it's £100 more or whatever, or 60 quid more for a wash station, but even the cheapest ones, but it would have been so much better than my box of toxic waste I've got in my cupboard now.
Well, the way to deal with that is when it gets hotter, leave that out in the sun.
Let it cure
and let the water evaporate, and then you'll end up with just a ton of like
dead birds,
cured resin sludge.
A ton of dead birds in my garden.
Well, actually, the thing as well is like, if there's no lid on it, then. But then also, if you put the lid on it, it makes it harder for the water to go anywhere. So it's like this weird mix of... That's the advice I always say. It's just, just leave it out in the sun for a few days. Like, put it on a windowsill. And I'm like, okay, well, I can't... I'm not leaving it out in the garden because there are cats in the garden.
I get frogs. I get frogs in my garden all the time. I don't want dead frogs in my resin water.
Yeah, that's terrible. Also, I can't just leave it in the most sunny windowsill in the house because I have 2 children.
You'll have a dead family by the end of it.
Yeah, I don't... Like, I brought them in here when I...
Go on, sorry, go on. I was going to cut you off, but I shouldn't.
I brought them in here when I was really producing loads of like resin prints, and I was like, okay, girls, this is basically magic. It's not really magic, but it's basically magic. So I want that model. I send it to that. It does it. The only downside is, if this is on, you do not come into this room. You do not touch it. You barely even pretend it's not there even. You can't come in unless I'm in the room whilst this is on, because the stuff it makes the models out of is toxic and harmful. At the very least, it can make you extremely itchy. At the very worst, you go to hospital and I have to explain why my 6-year-old has been playing with
inhaling resin.
Yeah. Also, the bottles down there, you can't touch those because that's isopropyl alcohol. So don't mess with that. Like, they've got tamper-proof caps and everything. And,
of course,
you know,
but
like,
still...
My
that's why mine's in the shed now, dude.
Stuff,
like, because I've had a kid recently, and my wife's like, they can't be in the house. Like, I agree.
Yeah,
because they were our annex, but no, they can't be.
I've moved all the stuff into the garage. Like, it's not that I don't trust them to not come in,
but they're kids.
And mess with stuff, because they probably won't. But they're also curious, and you know, all the warnings in the world only work so far when kids start egging each other on.
How many horror films have you seen where a kid drops their ball and it bounces down the steps into the basement where they're not meant to go because there's like a deranged cousin that's chained up down there, you know?
Yeah.
So that's right. The 3D printers should be positioned to them like Bart's twin in the basket in the attic. Don't go near it.
Yeah,
But I think
it's got to be kept away.
The toxicity of resin has been understated. I genuinely believe this. So there's a really good YouTube video by I got into a deep hole of watching a lot of 3D printing content for a while, and there's one YouTuber he set up 3 printers. See, it's 3 mass market printers. So it's like Elegoo or something like that in his like workspace, and he measured it with like Have you seen this video? Yeah, he measured it with, I wish I could remember who it was, an industrial air grade filter thing. And it was just outside of human living standards, like the entire time they were on. And even he was using like charcoal filters, open windows, ventilation pipes, and it still was bad. And I had mine running in this room when I first got them. I had one over here, and I got like an ulcer on the back of my throat, and I was like, "That's weird," and I just moved it out straight away. Yeah. So I think, although it's not harmful if you filter the air, I don't think that's necessarily true. And there's probably a lot of stuff that's going to come out years down the line for that.
It's even stuff like the idea of the charcoal filters. Like Elegoo sends charcoal filters with most of their printers. They didn't send one with the Saturn IV Ultra, which is interesting. I think probably because there's got to be some tacit acknowledgement somewhere that they don't do anything. I mean, one of the big things is it removes like the harmful odors from the air. Like you can't smell it. That's also a total lie, because if the printer's running in the garage, like the garage door is sealed and everything, but if you open the door just for a moment to go and check on it, you can just smell it. You can smell it just permeating like through into the kitchen and stuff. And it's like, you even with 2 filters running inside that unit and with an air purifier next to it, I can still smell it. If I can smell it, that probably means that all the other stuff that's coming off it is also not going away.
Yeah, be careful about like getting into your kitchen and stuff. I really would. Like, I don't want to scaremonger, and I think 3D printing is fantastic, but there's no doubt in my mind that this is like way more harmful than anyone is really actually admitting. We have stuff like I've got stuff so it gets sent to basically the outside of the garage, so the garage isn't like sealed or insulated, which makes printing in winter interesting. But same with the shed I've got. I'm just not printing into the weather's just got better, so I guess I can start printing again.
For the Saturn IV Ultra, when I did that review, I did have it printing in here, but I had it printing in here whilst I was not in here. The door was sealed, the window was open, there's a fan set up that is just sending all of the stuff this way. Like, I had a pipe with a little fan plugged into the, like, not into the actual printer itself, mostly because I couldn't get the little fan cover off the sent towards that very open window. That door's going to stay shut. The other door connecting to the garage is going to stay shut. I'm not messing with it. Came in like once or twice. Each time was just very quickly kind of walking in going, yeah, it's still going back out again, and then just leaving it. And after that, I didn't come in for a while just to wait for everything to clear out and for it to air out properly.
Do you know that begs a question about, like, so we don't want to breathe it. We want to filter it and air it out and put it out. But then those fuels are going into the environment. And on a minor scale, it's going to do nothing, right?
Yeah.
But as this gets more and more mainstream adopted, because I believe in like 10, 15 years, people will be 3D printing taps to replace the taps in their homes and stuff, right? That's the direction I assume it will go. So there's got to be leaps and bounds made to make that stuff less toxic if you want people to print stuff in their home for daily use, you know? That's more filament than anything, but...
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like it hasn't been around long enough for there to be proper research into it. It feels like companies went, you can do this at home.
I don't think this podcast is getting sponsored by 3D printers anytime soon, as I'm doom and glooming about resin damage, but it's true. I listen to like history podcasts and Behind the Bastards and stuff like that, and there's often they talk about like how people first responded to lead pipes or cigarettes or all these things that like later on down the line were like, oh, actually this fucked us right up. And I think
Radium.
Exactly.
Women licking brushes that had radium paint on them to paint watch faces.
Yeah.
And then suddenly they all get awful illnesses, and it's like, oh, what's this? Oh, we're just licking.
People were irradiating their balls at one point to try and make their virility better. And then those people just got testicular cancer because no one knew what was going on. I'm not saying it's quite like that. I'm not saying Elegoo is giving anyone testicular cancer. That's not what I'm saying. Just to be very clear before I get sued. Anyway, so that's 3D printing, and we live in a hobby renaissance where not only do we have kits that we can kitbash, we can 3D print stuff to stick on our things and make them new and fancy and special.
That is the thing. It is genuinely incredible. Like, you can just go, I want this model, and I now have this model. Like, one of the creators I like the most is Bestiarum Games.
Yes, yeah. I was on the Patreon for a while too.
Right, is there one of their horrific angel things, which I printed on the Saturn IV Ultra, and it's amazing that you can just go, I want this thing. it's super useful for kit bashing. It's super good for D&D because someone at some point will have made pretty much exactly the thing you're thinking of. So if it's a case of I need something with too many faces and not enough arms, and you just go for a little hunt through a few good creators, and you will most likely find something.
You can also get parts too. Like I head swapped some Marines with some 3D print stuff. I 3D printed 10 orc jetpacks and just stuck them to normal boy models to create my storm boys. Because again, I wasn't going to pay GDW prices to try and build like 15 of those things because I like to build everything in excess and min-max everything. But
Sallet helms for Stormcast Eternals to make them look better.
Oh yeah, because you're not a fan of the.
I've never liked the face helmets, but I do love a good Sallet helm. And there's a creator who just did like a big helmet pack that have got like Bretonnian knight heads, also catgirl heads that are in there, but I don't tend to use those.
Of course.
Like Sallet helms and various other things. And there's a drawer over there that I can't currently access because it's got a tank on it, but it's just full of plates of Sallet helms that I just one day went, I need to just print a load of these for whenever I need them. And there's like 120 or 130 in there that I just mass produced.
That's my plan is to print loads of stuff, things for bases and stuff and things like that. So because there's an argument that makes kit bashing less expensive. So let's go back to that bit I mentioned earlier about the exuberance of kit bashing. Yeah. Because buying one kit. So I for example, here's an example, a very hard example for it. I recently kit bashed a kid's toy that I bought off a car boot sale. So this is the opposite end of the scale. I'm going to show it on stream now. Is it accessible? Have I put it? Where the fuck is my ambulance? Let me grab the ambulance. 1 second.
I mean, I already love the name.
Now, the paint job for this, people at home, is not finished. But this, and I'm sorry for listening on Spotify, this is why you should subscribe to me on YouTube. This is the ambulance, right? This is an ambulance that I got off a car boot sale for 50p, and my wife was like, why are you buying that? I'm like, because it looks like it could carry some orc boys. Yeah. And then I've stuck shit all over it, and the stuff stuck to it, there's a bit of green stuff for some wires, and there's some plastic card and stuff, but mainly it's like guns from other kits and spikes from other kits, and this is all plastic card. Love me some plastic card. Where was I going with this? Oh, the wheels. So my 3D prints weren't set up. I needed some wheels. So I went into my local... This is an absurd thing and I'm really embarrassed. I bought this for 50p. Went to a local store. Bought the Gene Stealer Cult transport truck. What's it called? Rock grinder?
The Goliath.
Yeah, the Goliath. Took the wheels off that, stuck them to this. Oh, no, hang on. Did the wheels for that go on something else? And these are the wheels from the truck. Either way, I bought another kit to get wheels for another kit and took the wheels of that kit to put on this kit. By kit, I mean toy. So 50p, cheap as chips, kit bash, ended up being quite expensive because I bought a £35 kit. Yeah. But in my defence, the Goliath Rock Grinder, whatever it's called, the front grille for the grills, that's going on another orc vehicle. The body itself, I'll probably put on skis. I'm going to do all sorts of weird shit with it, so it's not completely wasted. It's going to be cannibalized for multiple projects. Yeah, just this one looks a bit exuberant.
That's the thing. It's like it can be way more expensive, but on the other hand, you then have all the stuff that's left over to then build other things with. So
you hope, because sometimes you put those other bits in a box and then you're like, oh yeah, remember that time I bought a Void Dragon just to get his spear? And then that's not an example I've done, but I know people have done this. And then they just got like half a Void Dragon, like a £60, £70 kit.
Yeah, I tend to try and force myself into using stuff that I otherwise wouldn't have a use for.
Yeah, I think you're better at this from the outside looking in, because you do a lot of 3D printing for like all the arms you use for that big arm thing.
Oh yeah, I like sticking too many arms on things. I don't know why. So this is one of the like stupidest Mecha Gargants I've done, because this was me forcing myself to use part of a kit that I didn't think I would ever actually use.
So are those the steps from the Sigmar
yes,
Palisade steppy thing?
What's it called? The Bone Tithe Nexus. That's it.
Oh, okay.
So I bought that box because I wanted the big column in the middle.
Yes,
so that I could stick it into a Nurgle kit, which is like over there, like that tall guy there. And
again, sorry, Spotify users. I suppose just take this podcast completely to a visual medium, but carry on.
It's very visual heavy, isn't it, so far? So I used that for that model, then I used the swords that the statue is holding in that kit on another model, gave them sword, like knife legs, And then I had just the base of it left over. And it was just in the box, and it's like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this, because I've used everything else. Like, this is it. There's just these steps, and what can you build out of that? And then I found a bit of graveyard I had left over from another kit, and a Banshee from the Soulblight Gravelords, and decided to make a floating prison that's got a screaming woman trapped in the middle of it.
That's pretty sick conceptually. Like,
I had it, like, I've managed to get it just... It mostly looks like it's hovering. It's not perfect. It's very hard to get something this tall to sit on a tiny contact point. But when it comes to, like, getting a kit for one idea, I don't... I'll do it, but then I force myself to use the other bits, because it's like, I've spent 45, 50 quid on this thing. I've used one part of it. That's not an acceptable ratio.
Do you ever go, what's the term, kit break diving? The people on eBay who sell parts of stuff. Do you ever go look at bits on there?
Yeah, all the time. All the time. Because there is some stuff, like... I find it easier to buy a bigger kit to do kit bashes with, because just the sheer size of it means, like, I don't actually need 8 Mega Gargants. I know I don't need that. I'm ending up with 8. And I'll probably end up building more after that, just because it's just...
How many fits into an AOS points list at the moment? So,
4.
There's 4?
Yeah. There's 7... I've got 7 currently. I've got the parts to make an 8th. And I know I'm going to build more than that.
I think I'm going to end up with this with Orc trucks. Because this is a really interesting point that we're coming to naturally, is like what you can play things as. So like the Wambulance, for example, that's going to be a truck, and I've got a truck, then I've got a Rhino, I've got an Impulsor, and I'll probably end up trying to get like most transports in the game orcified, just for the fun of it. Fuck knows where I'm going to put them all. But anyway, like the Wambulance compared to... Oh, I didn't show you, the lights still work.
Oh, it's still got the...
So, again, sorry, listeners, but look. So when I call the War, I purposely blue tacked over them and didn't like airbrush those when I was putting the base colour on. Anyway, so... The Wambulance is too long. I was thinking, because I measured the length, I wanted it to be playable. Like, I play tournaments too, right? I'd love a bit of comp Warhammer, even if the game is horribly unbalanced. But, so I measured it, and I was like, oh fuck, this is too long. Do I just saw the back end of it off? And it can be really funny, like, make it look like they just sawed the end of it off. But I liked the shape of it so much, I don't want to do that. So now, before every match, I say, this is a truck, this is a truck, this is a truck, this is a truck. Please note the Wambulance is longer than the other trucks, and that gives me inherent advantages of being able to get out further, see around corners, body block. So what I explain is from windscreen wipers down, if you're okay with this, we'll just play that part of the model does not exist for sight lines, for measuring, for body blocking, or anything.
Yeah.
And so far, out of 2 or 3 events that I've played that Wambulance out, everyone has been pretty cool. Because tournament players are actually way more relaxed than casual players realise. The vast majority of them are like, sure, whatever, let's just play. It's only your slightly gamey pricks. And you find one of them every 10 matches where you're like, oh, you're a prick. Okay, well. But you find pricks everywhere. I've met pricks down Tesco. So, Mega Gargants. You've played your Mega Gargants at an event, didn't you? Didn't you go up to Honest Wargamer?
Yeah, I went to Facehammer.
Facehammer, that was it.
I took my Mega Gargants with me. The year before, I'd actually taken the Soulblight Gravelords that are up there, which, again, that's an army that's got a ton of conversions and kit bashes. And
explain to the audience at home, the layman, the difference between a conversion and a kit bash, would you say?
I mean, generally, I think... When it comes to conversions, it's taking one model and trying to change its function to something else. Whereas a kit bash is more just, I guess, like personalising something.
Would you say they're completely different, or are they on a scale?
I think, honestly, it's become a bit nebulous at this stage. Because I would class like my Mega Gargants as kit bashers, but they also, none of the kits are Mega Gargants. Like, you can buy a Mega Gargant kit from Games Workshop, and it's a big giant dude with like a gut on him and a big weapon.
He's got a sack full of people.
He's got a sack full of people. He'll have some sort of club. None of that army. I didn't use a single one of those. They are all totally different models.
So a conversion usually, I guess, to try and put some definition on it, is normally taking one kit and literally converting it to do something else. So the very common thing is you take an Age of Sigmar thing or a 40k thing and you convert it to function in the other game. So for example, I've got a squad of knobs that are in a different room, so I won't grab them, that are Blood Bowl Black Orcs, but I've put a power claw on one hand, I've put a pistol on their hip, and I've changed their headdress, so they are now knobs. And the common one with Mega Gargants that you see is people will saw their arms off and stick guns on them and play them as Chaos Knights. That's that's a way that people normally convert Mega Gargants into the other game system. So a conversion is normally with the aim of changing them to be something else. A kitbash can create a conversion, I guess. You can kitbash two things together to convert it, but I guess a kitbash doesn't necessarily have to have that conversion focus or plan.
Yeah. It does kind of feel a bit nebulous in a way, where it's kind of one can kind of be the other, but also not necessarily be like, maybe like all kit bashes are conversions, but not all conversions are. I don't know, that sort of feel.
I don't think it's too important to have to define it hard, but I thought it'd be good to at least, because I find myself doing this a lot, saying terms that then someone's watching like, what the fuck does that mean?
Yes, so, I mean, there's a lot of, especially in that side of the. When it comes to like the building and painting side of the hobby, I feel like there's not quite like just as much kind of innate language that you pick up, but there can be. Like,
I think
like
so.
Things like, oh well, do you zenith or highlight? It's like, well, to someone who's just starting out, what does that mean?
Yeah.
What does that actually mean in a functional way? Like,
you've got terms that don't work compared to, like, you've got basing, and you're about playing or modelling, because that can mean two different things in those contexts. Someone like mentions rimming, and you're like, ooh, like, it's just, there's a lot of terms that need explaining. Zenithal highlighting, glazing, layering, edge highlighting, all sorts of shit. So absolutely, I think there's a lot of that. And it happens in gaming too. The lexicon that we get of like a brick of this or crumping and all these terms that you come into the hobby. This all card games. You're like, what the fuck is that guy talking about? So I'm trying to make this accessible. So if I did that at any point, let me know, because it means I've actually achieved at least one minor goal and done something. Anyway,
I know I'm quite bad for just like throwing a term out, because it just becomes second nature, doesn't it? You just get used to saying stuff.
I think I've got a better perspective of this in Warhammer, because I'm kind of new. I'm like 4 years back in now from COVID and stuff. But with Magic, I'm very bad at it, because I'm an old man. I've been playing for so long, and I'm so long in the tooth that I'm just saying like, I'm self-referencing jokes from the channel from 6 years ago. People are like, what the fuck's a machine gun bastard? I'm like, you only know this if you've watched an old video of mine. That's pretty bad. I need to get better at that. You mentioned conversions in the Soulblight Gravelords then. So how did that work for taking them to an event and playing them?
For the Soulblight, it wasn't too bad. It wasn't like the Mega Gargants were way worse, because they just have no resemblance to the actual models that Games Workshop have made for that army.
And to someone who's Age of Sigmar fresh, because I've just started getting into it, how many different Gargant datasheets or war scrolls are there? How confusing can that be?
I believe at this point there's 6 different Mega Gargant war scrolls.
So you just walk up the table with your like 1,000-handed one and women screaming in a cell, and you're like, this one is Gargant Destroyer, this one is Gargant Reaper, or whatever.
Yes, so I actually have a picture that I made, and like I have an army list that I printed off and took with me for taking the Mega Gargants, which in fact I'll throw you over Discord, because that could like put that in the description as an example of what I don't think you necessarily have to.
Yeah. Because immediately you're saying that, I'm like, that sounds like more work than I'm willing to do, because I'm a lazy man.
Well, I just like, as I was putting it together, I was like, I can't take, like, with the Soulblight Gravelords, with that army, it's a bunch of wolves who look like wolves, but they got mushrooms growing out of them. It's like Laukavai, who she still looks like her, like the top half of her is what it should be. I just didn't put the monster body on. I moved the wings up, and she's like floating.
Yes, the half woman, half monster.
Yes,
looks like a centaur almost in the original.
Yeah, I made her like fly around on a big vortex of gore instead of having the monster body, but you could still clearly see it was her.
Sure. And there was zero complaints from people.
No, all on the right basis. The only things that caused confusion were the dragons that I took. So, funnily enough, it was a very monster-heavy list. There's sort of a theme that goes on with my army.
Isn't that also metagame very strong? Wasn't it one of the best armies in Age of Sigmar for ages, the zombie dragon list?
The Soulblight Gravelords were the Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon is, I think, still is really.
How many did you take?
But
2.
I took one Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, a normal Zombie Dragon, and a Terrorgeist.
Okay.
Which actually, when that book came out, it had only been out for like a month when that
Right.
face hammer happened, and it was the weakest. Like that, that sub faction was the weakest one. There were people showing up with like really good armies of just filled with cavalry that did horrendous damage on the charge and all sorts of like really, really good builds. And then there was me with the absolute weakest build you could
Oh,
get
so you
out of
didn't
that
you didn't
book.
accidentally show up with the better game army?
No, I showed up and they were like, "This is a really cool army. I don't think you're going to win anything." I did win one, so I'll take that. And that was also that was my first experience actually playing Age of Sigmar, so that was a fun way to a fun way to go in. But like the dragons were the things that caused the most confusion because the Terrorgeist had 2 heads instead of 1, which then meant that a few people thought, "Oh, is that like a vampire lord?" But it was not.
because that's the thing. There's certain like not iconography. What the word I'm looking for? Like visual design cues that are meant to tell you what a thing is. Like Kiros Fate Weather, the big bird demon in 40k has 2 heads, but the other ones don't. So so some people do build the Lord of Change with 2 heads, and then that can cause some confusion and stuff.
Yeah,
but
there was a few issues like that. Like the actual Vampire Lord on the Zombie Dragon, I changed it because I wanted it to be a bit more. The whole idea behind the army was like horrific hallucinations. So like the direwolves have got things growing out of their eye sockets and out of the rib cages and stuff. The Terrorgeist has got 2 heads and there's a giant mushroom growing out of one of the
inspired
eye
by
sockets.
the Thing, I assume.
Yeah, there was a bit of that, a bit of annihilation as well. A lot of annihilation actually.
Okay,
That kind of like just everything mushing into strange sort of blooming visuals and things. So the Vampire Lord I didn't put on the back of the dragon, like riding it. It's at the end of the neck. So the torso leads into the neck and there's a bunch of hands coming out of the midriff, like hands and arms reaching down. And because the Vampire Lord wasn't on the dragon, people just forgot that it was a Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon. Right. Because she was at the front, not in the middle, they just did not register.
That's probably a really interesting takeaway from all this. So firstly, before we move too far on, I just want to highlight how cool of a name the unit Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon is. Because it's really on the nose and it feels very classic Warhammer. Yeah, there's no disputing what that model is, what that unit is. It's much better than like Exterminatus Liberatus up my arsus or whatever some of like the current like
Stormcast ones. Everything ends in or us, and I don't know what anything's called.
It's just
anymore.
low gothic, high gothic gobbledygook, right? And it happens with all factions, especially in 40k. Anyway, so Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon.
Yeah.
So I guess 2 takeaways, interesting points to talk about there are like when kitbashing something up that you plan to play either just casually with your friends, because it does apply here, but also at events where you're meeting people that haven't played with you before, who are coming into you want to go into a match with someone who's a stranger in a way that makes everyone feel relaxed. It doesn't feel like you're trying to game with people. So a few things about kitbashing then. So firstly, we mentioned it 2 or 3 times now, we haven't really explained it. Base sizes. Now, the reason base sizes matter in Age of Sigmar, for example, it's how much of a space you can hold up, how much of the objective you can block off from someone being on it, how many models you can come into contact with in melee. So bigger and smaller bases can give you advantages. A smaller base means less of orcs can surround you to fight you. Bigger bases means you can, with a zombie dragon, for example, it's very hard to kill. It can cover a huge amount of the objective and stop people getting on it. So there's an argument that in 40k and AOS and all tabletop games, the base size and your footprint is really important to how playable or what your rules are. So if you go and kitbash something and absolutely fuck it by giving it 3 times the base size, I've got an example. Check this bad boy out.
Did you do the thing of going, I have this base, this will work, and then look at the rules and go, oh no.
Kinda. So getting into the hobby, I was getting back into Blood Angels, which would be a question we're going to come to towards the end of the episode as well. And I own too many Blood Angels, and I wanted everything Blood Angels, because as a kid I couldn't afford anything, and now I've got disposable income, I'm like, give it to me. Anyway, the Sanguinor model sucks, right? There's just no 2 ways about it. It's an old fine cast piece of shit. So I'm like, I want to do my first full kit bash, which involves no parts from the original Sanguinor. So I built this thing. Right? It's not ideal, it's not fantastic, but it's okay, it's fine. It's my first ever kit bash, and it's basically parts of Sanguinary Guard, parts of some AOS kits, and all sorts of stuff, right? But this base size is literally twice the circumference of a Sanguinor, because he's on like an old Finecast base.
Yeah.
And that matters a lot for all sorts of things. It can be an upside and a downside, because the Sanguinor in the current rules, he comes out of Deep Strike. He heroically intervenes out of Deep Strike. So if you charge the Blood Angels, he can appear out of nowhere and join the fight, which is such a fucking sick rule.
Yeah.
But that means that when he lands and he's got a base this big, you can position him in ways that mean that he's closer to multiple models than he should be able to be, and that can fuck up how people move during combat. We're getting really into the weeds of how 40k combat works, something that I love, but I understand the audience might be like, Vince, shut the fuck up. But he shouldn't have a base this big, and I fucked it. And this guy's never seen play at an event, because I can't even be like, oh, by the way, just pretend the base is smaller, because it just makes things so difficult. So be careful about base sizes. It's quite important.
That is the main thing. Like, I made a similar mistake where I built a bunch of things that I thought were cool. Didn't know what they were going to be. I just had a fun idea to take the Ambot kit, and in fact, I've grabbed one.
Oh, I fucking love that kit. I wanted to make Mega Knobs out of that kit, but I never got round to it, and now I've got all these Mega Knobs made. I've got to find something else to make them into now.
So, this guy, it's the Ambot kit with a bunch of extras, obviously, but I wanted to make them taller, so I decided to see what would happen if I stacked the legs. So that you're using both sets of legs out of that kit, but one on top of the other, which really raises the height of it. And then I decided that it would be fun to try and make them sort of somewhat like steampunk, like Magitech Knight sort of feel to them. So there's like Grey Knight helmets in there. There's weapons from, I think there's like a Deathwing mace. There's a Stormcast hammer of some kind. There's a bunch of warpstone from various Skaven things on the back of it. I mean, there's even stuff from like the stupid Khorne, the Lord of Skulls, like that smokestack.
Did you buy a Lord of Skulls just for that smokestack?
No. I bought the Lord of Skulls for my / Knights force, because, you know, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And I built it and I put it on that base, and then I said, what could this be? What can I use this as? Because I want to make more of them. I've got like 8 of these now, and
that base size is like a Contemptor. Well, they don't exist in 40k anymore, but like Contemptor Dreadnought size, right? It's not Redemptor, is it? It's a bit smaller, or is it Redemptor size?
I think it is the Contemptor.
Okay.
The Redemptor's are quite a big base. But I was like, what could this be? What can I use this as? And I just went to social media and said, what is this? This is the height. So
this is the term used in the 40k sphere and in gaming as counts as.
Yes.
So you rock up and you're like, this counts as X, and that means you've got a model that may look nothing like the original, which brings us back to some of the gameplay elements. But it counts as X. So 2 of my war bosses are third party. No, it's the goth rocker with his guitar with the head swap. Yep. That's one of my war bosses, and the other war boss is a third party guy screaming into a microphone. And my war bosses are like war singers. And I explained at the very beginning, the 2 guys holding guitars and microphones, they're the war bosses. They counts as war bosses.
Yeah. I mean,
can't do that at a GW event though. You can't do that at an actual Warhammer World. They'll get really funny about third party, not quite the right stuff.
If it's entirely GW parts, they don't have a problem with it. But if
so technically one of my war bosses is illegal because the head is from the war boss on bike that is now Legends or whatever.
Yeah, I think that would still be fine. But like for these, I was just like, I built them. Didn't know what
so is that Warhammer World legal?
Yeah. All of this is GW parts.
You GW whore, Kirioth.
Yeah, I can't help myself. I've just got so much of it now. There's no, but
you're stuck in the ecosystem.
Gargants, just normal Gargants for AOS.
Oh, the smaller ones.
Yeah, they're the right size for that. And I was like, okay, cool. What base size do they use? Having already, built a bunch of them, they are on ovals and they are not this size. So
so social media wasn't very helpful.
I've got to basically rebase all of them if I want to use them.
But then they won't be cohesive with the rest of your Gargant force, because your Gargant force is very Eldritch Horror, very Bloodborne boss.
Well, that's the thing. I technically have 2 Gargant armies for AOS at this point, because I've got the sort of Steam, the sort of Magitech, sort of Warpstone powered robot knights, and then I've got a bunch of Lovecraftian nonsense as well. So I've got the same army twice. But also, given that these are the smaller ones, like the playstyle of having a bunch of small Gargants compared to having 4 big ones is quite different. So I could actually have quite a bit of a different experience if I ever got round to taking the bases off 8 of these things and then replacing them with ovals.
That sounds like a fucking nightmare.
That's why I haven't done it. It's been years, and I'm just like, I can't think of anything more annoying or like kind of soul destroying, because I was really happy with the bases on them, and I was like, One day I'll get round to
I
it.
play the Talons of Slanesh or whatever it is, the one with the big fan of like blue. Oh, mine's blue behind it. They never got 40k rules, and I love those models. So I bought one, built it, painted it up, and then I play it as a Shalaxi. But the problem is, it's on the wrong base. The profiles. So I'm modeling for disadvantage because it's too big. It can be seen around corners that Shalaxi couldn't because its arse is so big. And then I just, for the event that I played it in, I blue tacked it. I completely understood that this wasn't. I might not get best painted for this. I think someone could argue I shouldn't get fully painted, but I blue tacked it to a different base. The base that I blue tacked it to was fully painted. It was like a temple base for one of my dreadnoughts. I blue tacked it to that, so I had the correct circle underneath it. I just put it like that because it's on an oval. So you can do stuff like that. The other thing about Count Saz, and your Mega Gargants are a good example of this, is rocking up to an event, saying thing is X, and then but there is X, Y, and Z that are all similar looking, similarly named shit. And your opponent, who doesn't even know what Gargants do, is now like, oh, I don't know what any of this does. Like, there is an element of, with kitbashes and Count Saz, that you should try and make your models recognizable. Because there's a visual language in 40k, right? Like, you know the profile of a unit. You know what colors and helmets and guns mean sometimes. A lot of alien factions, no one knows what any of the guns are, right? If someone's like, your guns aren't correct on your orcs, I'm like, fuck, do you know what a Mega Blaster is compared to a Mega Zapper? Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
So there is an element of that. But I think if you just communicate with your opponent, if you just talk to them, like, I clearly explain things as we go quite regularly. Especially if I've got kitbashes in my army, I'm like, don't forget, this is X, and this can do Y. Like, you can't be a gamey prick and stay quiet and then catch people out with stuff, because then you're really fucking them, because, like, the visual language is also leading them down a garden path, which isn't fair.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons that I made that sheet saying what each Mega Gargant was in the book. I also, whenever like it came to deciding what they were going to charge at or shoot at or whatever, straight away I'd be like, so remember, this is this type, this is this type, this is this type. And then if the response was, can you remind me what that does again? It's like, yeah, no, that's fine. That one has got a ranged attack, that one doesn't. So, like, trying to make sure you're on top of, like, because I can't, like, as I was making that army, I was fully aware that it doesn't follow the visual language of the actual models it's being used for at all. It just doesn't. I mean, 2 of the 4 models in there have wings. Mega Gargants don't fly. They have no fly speed. There's no movement speed.
Scarbrand has wings and he can't fly.
Yeah, it's true. But it's like I can't have this big winged creature that looks like it should have a super high movement speed on like a big pile of rubble to get the right height, and then not tell people this only has a movement speed of this. Because if you look at it and you're not like familiar with the army, and even being familiar with the army doesn't help when things are that far removed. Like, I played against someone who had a Sons of Behemoth army, and they were like, this is amazing. What are any of these? And I was like, that's why I have this. And just, I printed out enough for everyone to have.
I think you did good due diligence there by bringing that. That's like a good bit of sportsmanship in a sense.
I feel like if you're going to go that far with it, because there's I think there is a difference between this was a Stormcast Eternal and now he's a super fancy, I don't know, Custodes leader of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
The visual language is similar as long as you've got the right weapon on it. Most people will be able to look at that and go, okay.
To be fair, I'm pretty fucking Wizzywig as bollocks too. Like, this is something that I'm going to get... Maybe you want to come on and debate. I want to get Mikey on to do like a debate episode, because he's so fucking anal about Wizzywig. I've got an ATST, I won't grab it because it's up there. That's got like a claw on it and a gun on it. It's painted yellow, it's got orc shit slapped on it. And he's like, it's not a Morkanaut because the claw's too small. I'm like, shut the fuck up. It's obviously a Morkanaut. It's a big walking robot with claws and guns. So
I'm absolutely not that. I mean, there's 2 of the tanks on my desk at the moment. There's this one, so that's a Lehman Russ.
Yeah, which the double plasma exterminator cannon does not exist in 40k. So...
Yeah, no, that's not a thing. But you can have a Sponson on either side with a plasma cannon on either side.
Right.
So that's
your plan is to play that as double plasma cannon and plasma turret or whatever. And it's just represented
because it's got 2 lots of plasma. One counts for the sponsons, one is the main gun.
Yeah.
But there's no.
So you've actually done more Wizzywig with that than you might first think, because you've thought about what the sponsons are.
I try and make sure that they're at least represented on the model. Like the Baneblade that's up there, technically it has an extra heavy bolter because it looked cool to put the turret where I put it.
To explain to people at home why this stuff matters, because like, especially at tournament play, but even if you're just playing casually, like, having people able to tell what your models have got is helpful for the game to flow. Because Warhammer's so
definitely.
needlessly complex. Well, not needlessly. It's so overtly and explicitly complex that having something to simplify it down by looking at a model and going, oh, that's got a flame or that's got a bolt gun or whatever, does help. Absolutely do agree. I also think that the hobby is so fucking cumbersome and slow to get anything onto the tabletop. Hobby lag, money, cost, time, energy. I was talking about earlier, the hobbyist who gets home and they sit down and they're like, I've got an hour and I'm not going to get these fucking models done to play at an event. It's really sad to take those people and force them to have to Wizzywig everything to the extent that it's almost like a barrier to entry that's, it's to an extent, it's ableist, it's got a privilege element to it where then the people who are part of like competitive teams or content creators or whatever have so much more time, energy and resources to make their things Wizzywig or to have these options. So like average Joe who works their 9 to 5 and this is their hobby, they're like, oh, I can't actually keep up with the metagame or I can't adjust. And I'm not just saying chasing the most powerful thing, I'm talking about like, if there's loads of 3-wound models in 40k now, you might want plasma cannons that do 3 damage. And then like, bottom none of your Lehman Russes are models like that, and so on and so on. So there are elements like that. There are arguments for it, and that's why I'm going to do a whole episode on that. But I also think, ultimately, my goal is to let people play the fucking game in a way that's manageable.
Yeah.
And I think Wizzywig is actually quite counterintuitive to that. But also when you slap on top the wild kit bashes that you're doing, and my kit bashes that are a bit zany, like the ATST does look fucking derpy and weird. But I also think you should reward that creativity in the hobby.
Yeah, 100%. Like it's kind of, it's trying to make it, for me, it's always like, how can I make this clear as to what this is while still getting to do what I want? Like that's kind of what it boils down to. It's like with a lot of the Lehman Russ tanks that I've got, they have mostly the correct loadout, but they'll be represented in different ways. Like there's a Punisher version of that plasma tank that's got 2 Punisher cannons, because it's got a Punisher cannon on the turret, but it's got 3 heavy bolters as well. Now, you can, technically, it hasn't got the sponsons, but to me, it's like, you see a tank with 2 Gatling cannons attached to it, I would hope that your thought would be, yeah, that probably pumps out a lot of shots, which is exactly what that
very
profile
different
does.
from you saying, by the way, this has 3 las cannons on it. And you're like, sorry, what? That doesn't really make a lot of sense. So I think
that's true.
I'm saying you're doing the right thing because you're making it a visual language that fits or it'll tell something. Because there is none of that. I'm not saying that you should rock up to an event and expect people to be happy when you go, oh, my 10 Inverness Marines all have different weapons and it's actually a Stern Guard veteran squad, and you're like, sorry, what? Firstly, the names are nonsense, and secondly, you wouldn't know what any of those fucking guns are. So I absolutely agree with that. But like when you rock up, so one thing's gonna happen with me is that my orcs aren't quite all clawed up. Some of them are holding weird power weapons. Some of them are power weapons from other armies. I'm like, army wide, every knob has a claw. And if they're in mega armor, they might also have a saw, so they can move between the 2 profiles. And that's so clear that it's not to distract anyone, it's just to not punish me for having things from last edition, or punish me for kit bashing something, because some of my kit bashes are... This guy's in... Sorry again to Spotify listeners, this is like a running joke. I might have to get a t-shirt printed. Sorry to Spotify listeners. He's got a saw here, he's got a bolt gun attached to the saw, and his other arm is like a rocket / claw thing, and his armor is like cataphracti armor from the Heresy. So like he is like 7 different parts of different kits, and I'm just going to say he's claw and saw. Like everyone is, like, don't punish people
it's a lot easier to just go, this is what they've got. And the thing is, sometimes it can be a thing of like, oh, I can't remember what that unit does. You can look at them and then you might know what they do immediately. But then you can also just go, can you remind me?
Yeah.
Like I mean, to be honest, I'm prone to doing that anyway because I think I have I think I have like a limit on information I can take.
Sure.
When playing games, and there's also like there's a hefty amount of
Warhammer is so testing.
Absolutely,
yeah, exactly. But Warhammer's very testing on all that as well, right? It's asking you to go somewhere, communicate to someone you never met, and then remember and explain the rules for like. Yeah.
I mean, even with people that I know, and I'm friends with. Like, there's a lost battle report that I did with Mikey, where for whatever reason, partway through, I just fully forgot like a core rule for my Soulblight Gravelords. Just never used it.
Yeah.
It's like one of the foundations of the army. It's what makes it do what it does. And I just fully forgot because to me it had gone from... It's like I remembered that we were recording it. It was like, okay, I'm having a fun game with my friend, this is cool. But then at some point, the back of my head went, no, this is content. At which point, my brain just went, I can't do that. I can't do the on-camera thing and play at the same time.
I mean,
that's not possible.
That's very fair. Like,
it's like, the thing is, I'd already done one with him. So it made no sense. Like, we'd already had a battle report that we'd done together. I'd done one with Winters, like, a few weeks before. So it was all like, I'm obviously capable of doing that because I'd already done it. But just on that day, there's a little switch that just went, and you can't do that now.
It's juggling a lot of plates, right? We joked about this before we turned the cameras on today. Like, content creating is often spinning plates. And then, I've just already commented about how Warhammer is intense for what it asks of you to remember and do. And then on top of that, you're doing content as well. I don't think it's unreasonable, or but the thing is, the audience don't always think that way, do they? Not some of them will understand it. Some of them will comment like, I can't believe you forgot your core rule or whatever. And you're like, cut me some fucking slack here, dude. But
there was I don't know, when we did that God tier tournament together, there was a moment that I don't know whether it was fully captured on the stream or not, but I was playing against Discourse Minis on the stream of the first game, and I was enjoying myself. It was all good. And there were some issues with the microphones, and Mikey came in to say something about it, and he made just the most like supportive offhand comment because he knows that I struggle with anxiety and stuff.
Yeah.
And it was like, this looks great. It looks like you're having a really good time. This is awesome. And as soon as he said it, the self-awareness just went haywire. It went from, it looks like I'm having a good time because I'm enjoying myself, to I need to make sure that I'm looking like I'm having a good time. And you, like, there was literally...
Sometimes it's best to forget, right? Sometimes it's best not to have it in the forefront of your mind.
Felt my entire face go from smiling to just, like, deer in the headlights. This is now pressure. What do I do? And then I lost it for the rest of that game. I just didn't know what I was doing because I was like, I forgot what everything does. There's a camera. I know there's a camera there now. It was there the whole time. It was fine. I don't know what's happening. I get that playing 40k. In fact, any sort of, like, tabletop game, I still get it sometimes. So when it comes to, like, with the thing of what you see is what you get when it comes to extensive conversions or kit bashes, I always am just in the boat of, well, I need to be able to say, how does that work again? Because there's a chance that even if you have exactly what you're supposed to have, I might forget what that does. And it's not a case of sitting there going, I'm not going to learn anything ever. It's just the information just drops.
That's a good point about the whole, like, making it clear to your opponent. Like I said, with orc weaponry and Eldar weaponry, people don't know what the fuck the things are anyway. So, like, how important is that? But on the Wizzywig thing, on a point for helping with the Wizzywig, like, you're talking about, like, the stresses, the social anxieties, they're trying to figure out and remember stuff. Having all your models just have on them what they're meant to have can be helpful for you too. So you can look at a unit and be like, without having to check the app or your army roster or whatever, you can look at a squad and be like, oh, that's the one with the power fist. Although my advice for that would be to try and standardize all your squads to have all the similar stuff. So if you've got 10 squads of boys, they want to have one rocket launcher, one claw or whatever. And then the problem with that is that people don't have that stuff modeled. So then we're back to this point of being a bit more laissez-faire on Wizzywig allows you to have that sort of thing. Especially if things represent stuff. So if there's one orc in the squad with a big fucking thing, they're all rocket launchers. I'm not saying you should rock up with a guy with a sword and a pistol and he's like, that guy's got a rocket launcher, because that's a little bit... Because that can be gamed too, because you're like, oh, I didn't pick the rocket launcher guy out when things died and stuff. I get there's a lot to it, and the thing is, I think a lot of comp players are going to disagree with me on this, but I just really like the idea that anyone can rock up and play games. I think painting standards are bullshit. That's not what this episode's about. But I think forcing people to paint to a certain standard is just bollocks, because some people don't like painting.
Yeah, I think, like, having the move they've made to it being like a... Sorry, my light is absolutely collapsing and I don't know what it's doing. So, yeah, I think for some of the... I'm not always split between it, because for me, a game doesn't look as good if things aren't painted.
Sure.
And I like things to be painted for, like, the immersion factor of
Me
it.
too.
As much as you get that.
Don't get me wrong. I love that. Like, I love two painted armies. I try to get all my stuff painted even when I'm playing casual games if I can.
But at the same time, I'm like, I think we're both, like, in quite a lucky position where we have the time to sit and do it, and it can literally be classed as part of the job.
Yes.
And if someone, like, came to a game with me and they were like, look, this is a fairly new army. I know half of it is just prime black, but I just haven't had time. That's fine.
Yeah.
It's like it's a hobby. There's if you can spare a bunch of time for your hobby, then that's brilliant. Not just for like the game we're about to have, but also for you personally. But if you've been working like overtime for the last 2 weeks and you haven't got it finished, I don't think someone should sit there and go, well, you've not put enough effort in, so I'm afraid we're going to have to penalise you.
Yeah,
it's like,
deduct
no,
10
that's
points
not
from
how
you.
life works. What are you talking about?
And
Like,
also, like in a tournament setting, especially, it's like you're meant to be playing the game against each other. It's not a golden demon. Like this is the joke I always make, and I'm going to keep making it until people adopt it. You don't ask golden demon players to play a round of Warhammer 40k before they submit their painting. So why the fuck do you ask Warhammer 40k players in a tournament to make sure that they've based and painted minimum? Because the minimum 3 colour thing doesn't even achieve what people say. Because I've played against people who obviously don't like painting, and their armies look very bad because they have just sprayed them a colour out of a can and dry brushed their heads and then put a bit of black on their gun. There are top tier English players who do that because they don't like painting. Yeah. So like the 3 minimum standard stuff doesn't even get you there. Anyway, that's
also,
perhaps
there's schemes that don't even feel like they have they do have like the 3 colour minimum standard, but like I mean, okay, this ridiculous Bane sword, right? Mm-hmm. But again, heavily altered. Trying to get that gun to stay in that hull when that is a square opening and the gun... Sorry, that's like a sort of oblique angled opening and the gun is mostly round. Quite an experience trying to get that to fit and stay in there. This is going to be mostly
It looks dope,
white.
though. I love the front bulldozer blade things.
That was such a late addition. I'm really glad I did that. But this is going to be mostly white. So the colour scheme for the Armoured Company, which is literally just Imperial Guard tanks and nothing else, is a mix of this kind of cream white and blue. So you can see with that one there's blue at the back, there's white at the front. With some of the others it's more mottled, so it looks a bit more cloudy or a bit more sort of camo-y. And it just depends on which way round I fancy doing it at the time.
You got to play with it now before they remove the ability to play only armour. Because at the moment that's doable, but you can guarantee 11th edition they'll introduce troop taxes again because they always whack some weight on stuff.
If they do that, I'm going to be so sad because the entire army is just it's just tanks. But that big Bane sword is going to be primarily white. I'm not going to do any blue on it because I've got other tanks that are mostly blue. I've got another Bane. I've got a Bane blade that is the mix of the two. I want there to be a contrast.
The theme is haunting, right? The theme is haunting? Yeah. Okay, hear me out. I know it's only tanks at the moment, and you don't even have to do this necessarily until they ask you to. How about ghost infantry? And I'm talking the little ghosty people from AOS. What the fuck are they called?
Oh, the Nighthorns.
Yeah, Nighthorn. But you put little English World War II little hats on them, and they've got muskets. And that could be your troops.
I really like that idea, actually.
Just ghost men.
Yeah, that would be really fun. That would fit as well.
There's an idea. There's an idea for you.
It's not gonna look like it's got the 3 colour minimum on it. It's gonna be white with weathering, and there's gonna be a bit of metal, and the candles are gonna have to have some yellow and orange.
My custodians are the same. There's a purple hair, and they're gold with a wash and a dry brush. So there's at least 4 colours on the minimum, and blades blue. But they still look. Because they've been spent. I don't know.
There's just some colour schemes that don't look that complex.
Just fucking let people play. Yeah. If they want to play, let them play. If they want to paint, let them paint. And the two should not be mixed. Well, they can be mixed. I mix both. But anyway, okay. So I think we've given people some good starts for kit bashing in terms of how to play with the stuff. How did you start kit bashing? What was your first kit bash? Because one of my patrons asked. So we have patron questions we're coming to now, and one of them asked, "What was the first model you painted?" That's from Tape Decker. He's got another question we'll come to in a second. But I think it's more interestingly, what was the first thing you kit bashed?
The first thing I kit bashed was an Iron Warrior squad leader. So I had a squad of 10 Chaos Space Marines, and the leader had a chainsword and bolt pistol, and I wanted him to have a bigger chainsword. And I had a spare bit of, a spare chainsword. So
you gave him an Orc Stomper chainsword, so it was 15 times his size.
Oh yeah, it was massive, and he was still only holding it in one hand, and because I didn't know what I was doing, and I was a lot younger, because this was in 3rd edition, I think, to be honest, I was probably still a little too old to be doing as bad a job as I did, but it was also one of the first boxes I ever bought, so I just took the blade of one chainsword, chopped the end off the other one, and stuck them together, so they were like, that? Totally wonky. I then tried to give it a cool flame paint job on the side, but I didn't know how to paint. So it was just like a layer of red, then of orange, then of yellow. No blending. Looked absolutely terrible.
Of course,
I've still got it somewhere. And I was like, okay, now this guy looks different to the other squad leader. What can I do to make that guy look different to the other guy next to him, though? Because they look really similar.
It unlocks something primal in you.
Yeah, from that point on, it was just, okay, well, I could just leave this how it is, but I can do things to make it look more interesting. And if someone has this army, like, has a similar army to mine, then mine will also look a little bit different because it'll have different aspects to it that theirs won't have.
I think that's one of the driving forces, right? Is to make your army unique compared to others. Like, even if you look up and see someone with the same, or at least it is for me, who has the same paint scheme as mine, I want them to have different helmets and heads, and their weapons look slightly different, and their backpacks look slightly different, and they're basically, like, that's one of the driving forces behind playing with miniatures, is to make them look like mine.
Yeah, it's your thing. It's like your interpretation. It kind of, I don't know whether it sounds like melodramatic or maybe even pretentious, but I feel like the armies that you make, there's definitely something of you that goes into it. You're kind of displaying a bit of yourself, even if it's just like a bit of like the creative process that you use. There's a bit of you that goes into any given project. You know, for people who just go super hardcore competitive, you know, they're not fussed about painting or anything or kit bashing. There's still a bit of them in the army that they've got because their army is like the sleekest, most streamlined, you know, best version of what that army can be at.
And playstyles too.
Winning.
You might pick something that's very aggressive because that's how you like to play. Like, yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of like your personal interests, how you like to build things, certain color schemes. I mean, I find that color scheme wise, I have to force myself out of comfort zones to manage to paint things differently. Like part of the army company was forcing myself to not fall back on just making metallic tanks with red accents everywhere because I like that color scheme, or using like turquoise kind of colors for things because I like that combined with like iron colors and stuff. I fall back on certain things over and over again because I just prefer that type of scheme.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to occasionally push yourself out to focus.
I still fucking do it now. I still default to doing red on, because I've painted so many Blood Angels. I'm like, oh, I'll do this red accent color. I'll do this red cape. I'll do this. And I'm like, stop using red, Vince. Jesus Christ.
You also get used to it, and then like you know that if you do that, it's gonna look good. It's like
because when you first paint a purple and you're like, oh, what is my midtone? Well, how do I highlight this? I don't understand what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Because you've watched so many Darren Lantham and like tutorials of a certain way, you know.
Yeah, it's very much like any given army just kind of starts out with a what would be fun, like what would be fun to make, not like necessarily what would be good on the tabletop. That never comes into it. Like I enter most games knowing full well I'm probably going to lose this just from the jump because there's no synergy here. It's just.
That's an interesting one because Tape Decker asks, the other part of his question that he asked is like, what armies do you think are the best to paint and which ones do you think are the best to learn or easiest to learn? But like, because you said about how like the armies you pick and the armies you build and the armies you customize and the armies you paint, like they're an extension of how you want to play a game. I find it really hard to be like, you should try X or Y because they're easiest or whatever. Because like Knights have less models to remember and Custodians have less models to remember and Marines are easier to paint, but I don't necessarily think like directing people to those all the time is the best thing to do.
No,
especially if you want to be creative, like we're discussing.
Yeah, you've also got to have things that like interest you. Like if the idea of going for something simple works for you, like one of the reasons I liked the Soulblight army that I took to Facehammer the first time I went is that it was very simple. There's not much like going on mechanically.
Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon. It's just in your name.
It was a bunch of dragons that fly in. And then there's a bunch of wolves that run in and a bunch of bats that fly in. And they are all like pretty much exclusively melee. There's just a few kind of...
Was that your notes, was it? So you can remember how to play. Fly, run, fly. Like, I can do this.
Pretty much. It was just keep the small things in front of the big things until you get to a point where the big things can really hurt people. That was pretty much
that sounds like you know a bit more about AOS than you let on, because you're screening and newbies don't know what that is.
The thing is, I was directed to screen, so when I was building the army, I was talking to Russ and Byron from Facehammer. I did an episode of their podcast, where we sort of built the list together. And initially, I was just going to go all monsters. That was it. And they were like, maybe have.
I know you want to do
monsters. Maybe do some, just, maybe do some screening. You want to make sure that you don't lose your monsters instantly, which you will do if you have 4 of those and nothing else.
That's why, for your armoured company, you need little ghost men to stand in the lines so the orcs can't get to the Baneblades.
Well, that's the thing. The Baneblades stay at the back and the Lehman Russes act as the screen.
Okay. You don't need a wall of ghost meat.
I mean, to be honest, I probably do. And also, the Baneblades, from what I understand, because I haven't played for a little bit, I've been a very D&D heavy and a bit more AOS heavy. I don't even know that the Baneblades can really move with the current
current
rules.
tournament terrain. No, not really. They don't. They also don't have the special rule to climb over 4-inch buildings, like Stompers and Morkanauts and Knights and similar can all climb over 4-inch or lower buildings. The Baneblades don't get that privilege. And also in tournament,
just drive through it.
Yeah, maybe they should have some sort of breaching ability for smaller terrain pieces or something, but. There was a kid at a Baneblade at a local event that I was playing, and it just sort of it drove up the side of the map because it couldn't fit in. It couldn't turn. There wasn't enough space for it to turn. And then, he did okay, I think. A Baneblade's still going to shoot stuff, and it's got reasonable guns.
That's the thing, though. It's like, I know they're not good, and yet I have a Baneblade and a Banesword in the current list.
Have you not done a Rogel Dawn yet? Speaking of big tanks, have you not got a Rogel Dawn for your armor company?
Well, I mean, I haven't built one yet. I would be lying if I said I didn't own 2. But
Did you buy the Battle Force?
I haven't built them. I got them from someone who broke down the Battle Force. They didn't want the tanks. They were like, "Do you want these?" It's like, yeah.
They're the coolest
bit.
I haven't built my Rogel Dawns yet. I built a load of the troops. I'm going to build the Rogel Dawns soon. I built some Lehman Russes for the first time last week, and
they're not bad. They're dated. The Lehman Russes are definitely dated.
I had a really interesting experience. I meant to wind the podcast down, but I'm coming to another anecdote. I built the original Lehman Russ model. And then I built the new Heresy Solar Auxiliary Punisher model. And it's just interesting to see the differences of the age of the first one. But I think the Lehman Russ kit still stands up. But that's because you can customize it quite a bit and you can build a little tank commander on top.
I can't complain about it because I've built 10 of them. So
yeah,
it's just the thing is, I don't know that if I ever got any more, which to be honest, I probably will mostly because I want the Solar Auxiliary version because
it's pretty. It's got all not filigree, but it's got metal banding around it and stuff.
I annoyingly think I prefer the sides of it. You can see more of the suspension and the tracks.
But it comes with no fucking sponsons.
Yeah,
but as if you built 10 Lehman Russes, you should have some spare sponsons somewhere because some of yours don't have them, and they all come with 2. Did people know this? The Lehman Russ tank comes with 2 sets of sponsons. On the sprue. That's why when you go on eBay, you can buy so many spare sponsons.
Yeah, it's super handy.
How the fuck are there spares? Surely you
can as well.
Yeah, you can just print them as well. Option. Yeah, exactly.
I like recessed ones now. I need to print some, but I found some STLs for the recessed sponsons instead, which I really like the look of those. So if I do end up going for why do you need more than 10? I mean, I only got 10 because that's how many you could fit into 2,000 points.
I think there are 160 points right now, so I think you can fit more than 10 into the current game. Hang on, I'm checking it live on the stream, on the podcast. I'm pretty sure there are 160 now, so you're actually a little bit short. You got 400 points to play with.
I mean, with the Banesword and the Baneblade, that accounts for nearly 1,000. So I've got
170. Sorry, 170. Got 300 points left.
Yeah, that's not.
That's a Rogel Dawn, I think. I think a Rogel Dawn's only 280 or something.
260 Rogel Dawn, I think.
They're cheap.
I kind of want to get the Macarius and use it
as
the
transport.
The Solar Auxiliary Macarius. No, it's the. It used to be a Forge World model, not the Dracosan transport. It's another tank. It's like a kind of medium.
As in the Malkador chassis, is it? Or not?
Is it the Malkador? It might be the Malkador I'm thinking of, not the Macarius.
Yeah, because it's named after Malkador, man.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking of a different Forge World tank. Okay. There's so many that I've just been coveting for so long.
Well, I joked earlier also about the stupid fucking names, so how can you get these right? But the transport...
named after blokes.
Yeah, blokes whose names are also nonsense. They're all superhero names in low gothic or whatever. The transport in that box set I really wanted to get to make into an Orc battle wagon, but I was like, I don't know if I'll ever need 2 Orc battle wagons. But stop making Orc transports. Stop it.
See, I would just run 2 for the fun of running. So that's basically how every single army is. It's just if I could make 2 cool versions of this,
if I'm
and
honest,
I can run 2, I will do that.
they
And
are
if
pretty
someone goes,
fucking
"That's
good.
bad,"
So
I'll
maybe
be
I
like,
should make a second battle wagon. My first battle wagon, I should finish it though. Check this out. I started building it last week.
It's a tricky bit. Yeah.
That's it. So it's quite funny that you can build, for those of you who can't see, on Spotify users, I'm sorry, it's a flat panel with wheels on it. And I didn't realise that's how you could stop at that point, which is really interesting. So
I always feel that they're bigger than that, and I don't know why.
I think it's because the frame gives it more space. But what I'm thinking for the battle wagons now is I might buy a second one, build this one normally, then for the second one, build this part, build the top part, put the top part on a rubber dinghy that I got from a car boot sale. Okay.
Yeah.
And then I'll have one that looks like it's a boat, and then this bit I can stick other things onto it and make this into like a. And then I've got like 3 battle wagons for the price of 2, and dinghy from a car boot sale.
I mean, it kind of feels like you need 3 battle wagons.
Well, they're really fucking good in the current rules too, so maybe I could find a list for it.
At some point, I need to dig out or replace. I had a little one of my favourite features from that Bane blade up there, that one there, is that you can take the back off it. So I based that vehicle off someone's artwork, an artist called Mike Francina who does Trench Crusade. Have you seen the artwork that he's done for? So he's kind of got this universe that he's setting up that I think is being developed into an actual like tabletop game at this stage.
Okay.
Which is it's called the Trench Crusades, and there's like kind of heavy Christian iconography, but fighting demons, and you've got warriors with swords, but you've also got guys in like gas masks and trench coats carrying flamethrowers with.
Yeah, it sounds like
crosses.
You're describing. I'm looking at it on my other monitor, so I'm with you. But it does sound like you're describing 40k.
It does kind of sound very much like that. But he did some art of a tank called the Hammer of Witches, and I really liked the look of this tank. And I had a Baneblade chassis that I'd started building for my for the Emperor's Children that never really went anywhere. Because I was going to make it into a big soundstage and have a bunch of, noise marines rocking out on it.
Sure.
And I got partway through and I just didn't like the way it was going, and I kind of shelved it for a bit, and I was like, I'll do something with that later, but I'm just not feeling. It's just not working out.
Apparently, this Trench Crusade is from the designer of Mordheim, the creator of Mordheim.
Oh, interesting. I didn't realise that he'd got that far.
So it sounds like it's actually quite a big deal in a way.
Yeah. That's made me more excited. I've got some miniatures for it on the way, hopefully, at some point. But
Are they doing miniatures for it, or is it miniature agnostic?
They're doing miniatures for it.
Okay, yeah, these miniatures are sick. The guy with like the Christian tall point church helmet and shit.
Yeah, it's really. I just really like his style. Is really good, and the kind of overall theme of it is really fun. But like that Baneblade was supposed to be a big soundstage, so I made space in it by cutting a little bit away on the inside to put a little Bluetooth speaker in.
Sure.
So that whilst it was on the table, you could, it could rock out as it goes. But then, because I didn't do that in the end, because I just didn't like the way it was going, I saw this artwork for this tank called the Hammer of Witches that he did, and I just had one of those moments where I went, I want to make that. I want to make like a super heavy version of that. I wonder if I can take this. I've got still got all the parts for the Baneblade. Can I make like a super heavy version of this? So
with a cathedral on it, back of it. Have you done this yet?
So I've got it just, in fact, I can grab it.
Show me, and the YouTube viewers, but not the Spotify viewers.
I'm whacking the vulture with it. So that it's technically the layout is not Baneblade because it hasn't got a turret, but it still counts as a Baneblade. So it's got a bunch of braking wheels on the back, which I had to look up what they were because his artwork has got these sort of struts with wheels with people like crunched all over them.
Yeah.
So I basically took the artwork and made a Baneblade version of it, but it's still got the thing that it had from when it was supposed to be a soundstage. So you can take that off, and then inside there's space for a little Bluetooth
speaker. So put
speaker.
a Bluetooth speaker in it and have it play people screaming.
Pretty much that or Powerwolf. I don't know which way to go with it because it's quite like. That's kind of the whole aesthetic is where this force came from because I just saw that, wanted to do a version of it.
Because I've wanted to do some form of church-like Baneblade or Knight to go with my sisters because, like, the Exorcist is cool and everything and stained glass, but there isn't enough actual moving cathedrals outside of, like, the huge knights and titans and
Yeah.
the Titans in 40k. So I always wanted to do one that, this is like a pipe dream that I've still not got around to. I bought the knight and everything, which was build the knight, have it flat topped somehow, maybe sand it down, put some plastic card on it, put some cork on it, put some mud texture on it, and then put the Sisters Battle Sanctum on top of the mud texture. So basically you've got a knight that has a cathedral on top of it, complete with dirt and mud and graveyard, and then have it painted as if it's come out of the ground. So it was like the cathedral was built on top of the knight, and then when the knight is used, it lands. Again, pipe dream shit. But I just basically, I want a big fucking church on top of something. And then the other option's like a Baneblade, because then it'll be literally just a moving church. It'll look like a terrain piece, but it's got a cannon poking out of it.
I haven't told my own views about this yet, because I'll be told off. But there's another Baneblade over there, which I haven't put together. Because
how many Baneblades are you up to now?
Only 3.
Only 3.
So it's not. I mean, you don't need 3. I say only 3.
I think you need enough Baneblades that each Leman Russ can have a Baneblade friend.
Well, I did think, like, once I've done, because I had a similar idea of like wanting to do a sort of much more cathedral-y, churchy one that is just like basically a moving building. And then as I was thinking about that, I did also think it would be kind of fun, given that there's the whole backstory for this force is kind of not like copied, but inspired by the like original artwork that I saw, and I kind of liked the idea of this being a distinctly like this tank company. There's something clearly wrong with it, but the Inquisition uses it anyway because it's extremely effective at hunting down psykers and witches. So there's like a zealotry that goes into hunting down the like mortal followers of Chaos, not necessarily the Chaos Space Marines, but the traitor guard.
See, because now we're getting into headcanon, which we didn't even touch upon, did we? Like,
that's a huge part of
it. Is your headcanon that there are humans driving these tanks?
Yes, the tanks don't open, but they can communicate with the drivers and the crew. But they just get shipped from one planet to another where there's, insurrections going on, and they get deployed against psyker-heavy enemy forces because for whatever reason there is an extreme zealotry.
It makes it even weirder that they're not like lost and damned. They don't just come out of the fog. Instead, it's like the battle is over, the smoke is clearing, and everyone's like, right, ship them back in, and you just hear muffled like, see you next week, Trevor. Like the guys inside.
Yeah, they don't ever see the crews. The crews don't leave when the battle is finished.
Do they get fed?
Just sit and wait.
Do they get fed? Do they open a little slot and slide in a bit of slop? And there's like
I think probably they don't get fed, and at this point they don't want to question too much about how the people in there are still alive and responding to
tears and remorse is the only food they need.
Yeah, that's all they need.
The sustenance of a dead psycho.
I feel like having a good backstory is a good it's like a core part of what makes the Force cohesive. Anyway,
I don't even think that's a Kitbash unique thing. Like when I was painting up my sisters, I was like, they're in bone colours because they smear the ashes of their dead all over them. That's their thing. And stuff like that. I think headcanon's cool. But
it adds an extra element to the storytelling part of like playing the games.
It's part of it, right? Like it's funny because like I feel like that's very absent from card games. No one makes up little stories about their decks in card games because it's kind of more abstract when you come to play Magic. But when it comes to like D&D and 40k and miniature tabletop and bolt action or any of this stuff, people like want the historical context or they want the lore, the fluff, or the theme, or the flavour. And card games don't really get that. Once you get over the age of 14, you got to pretend the cards are abstract notions, math representing damage as opposed to being like, fluff pieces. But this has gone on long enough. I don't want it too long because I don't want fuckers to... People have already turned off. They know what the retention rate was. The Spotify viewers are like, that's it. You can only apologise so many times before I turn off. Kirioth, where can people find your madcap inventions and what you do on the internet?
Mostly either Twitter or Instagram. I think it's Kirioth for both of those. And then for YouTube, it's... Okay, this confuses me. This could be like the last bit of inside baseball. If you go to Kirioth or Kirioth TV, both work. And I'm not sure why, because I feel like that shouldn't happen. But it does.
I assume that's because one of them is your name and one of them is the overall channel name that you've got on there.
I've never tried to fix that or work out why. I've just left it in case I broke something.
I'm the same. I'm like, don't touch anything in the back end of YouTube. It's not worth the stress.
It's too scary back there. It's worrying.
Yeah, like you don't question. It's a bit like the ghost men in the tank. You don't question it; it just works.
Yeah, no, it's just
So
how it.
Kirioth,
Oh, I
did you-
guess actually, also technically Adept is ridiculous, but
I was
that's
about to say,
once a month.
aren't you doing something with them now? I haven't listened to any of it,
Yes.
but
So I'm like the last episode of the month I host. So Bricky basically he does the other 3, and then he gets a week off doing hosting duties because I think he might be the busiest person on YouTube at this point. It's ridiculous. I have no idea how he has time to do literally anything. The episode before the
you've
last
seen the
one-
video. He had a video go a bit viral, which is him talking about how he hides his candy apple obsession from his assistant. And I mean, look, I love Bricky and everything, but my God, does that sound like a privileged position to be in?
It does. There was a I think it was not the last episode we recorded, but the one before. I woke up on the Monday morning, because we record them on Mondays, and I had a look at YouTube, and Bricky had just finished streaming, like as I woke up, and he streamed for 8 hours and 15 minutes, and I looked at the clock, and I was like, we're due to record in 7 hours. Like, what is he going to do now? Is he going to just switch off? Like, what?
Go to bed
what
for a
does
bit?
he do? It's just like...
He's one of the. Don't tell me he's one of those people like, I get up at 3:30 a.m. and go for a run. Those like, the grind set hustle influencers who are like, I'm just built different. Who knows? I'm like, I need to sleep more. I don't like sleeping. I like spending. We're going to another thing now. And I probably shouldn't. I don't like sleeping. I like to spend my time doing stuff. But I'm always fucking tired, and I'm also trying to get in better shape. And the way to get in better shape is also to sleep, because your body needs time to repair and heal and stuff. But that's the topic for another podcast where we talk about fitness and 40k. That will not be a video. I'm sorry, I find that stuff very... No, because people are like, I'm going to train like a space marine. I'm like, fuck that. Train like an orc, right? Space marines are cringe. I'm going to be the biggest knob in the room. Anyway, on that note, thanks for coming on. It's been fun. I'll get you on for another one, because I've very much tried to tailor focus towards this topic. But I'm sure we could talk for fucking hours about all sorts of shit.
Easily, yeah. That's the only problem with doing podcasts with like where you get on really well. It can just be infinite.
And topics like this, there's just so much to talk about.
Yeah.
We've hardly spoken about my knobs. I've only mentioned my knobs twice this entire podcast. On that note, thanks for watching, everybody. Don't forget to like, comment, all that shit. And if you did watch this on any of the iTunes or Spotify platforms, let me know, because it's interesting to see if people actually do see it over there. I'll see you in the next one. Ta-ta for now.